Hello and welcome to this video in partnership with Grads and Games for Frontier Development. My name is David Bamber. I've been at Frontier for 9 years, from a graduate designer to a now senior designer. I've worked on games including Planet Coaster, Jurassic World Evolution and Planet Zoo, and I work with and train graduate designers on projects like Planet Zoo, and I've recently been involved with interviews for graduate designers at Frontier. I come from a university graduate background myself, and my first job in the industry was a 3-month stint of QA before I got a job at Frontier as a graduate designer. So the topic of this video is, where do I network with other games professionals? And I remember this topic from university as well. I think it's quite an unintuitive one because I'm not really sure what networking means, I guess, or at least I wasn't. And the best advice I've heard on this is that your peers are your most important network. This is because they share your context, so they can give you the best advice and you can give them advice as well. That's really important, that you can compare your portfolios and projects so you can see how you can improve together. So my peers, for instance, are the designers within Frontier, and that means that I can talk to them about the designs that I'm doing and how I can improve. And we all kind of grow together in that regard. And that should be the way that I think you think about this as well. It's quite rare that you get contacts more further afield that you'll be able to use. The good news is that you have lots of those contacts at university. So for me, my professors, the industry lecturers that we had, any past graduates, we knew lots of students from not just our own year, but above and below, PhD and master students. We also had a sister course that did animation, so obviously we could ask them more detailed questions about, let's say, rigging or modeling or animating, even though we wouldn't use them in the same depth that they would. There's a lot of information there that can be really of use to you. Let's see. So over time, your peers will grow into the industry with you. So obviously they're really good for things like job recommendations. Just finding roles is the first hurdle for anything of that type. The second place that I network with game professionals is more of a passive medium. So that's academic and games journalism. So there are lots of design articles that you can find in all sorts of places. It's like gamasutra.com. There might be design blogs and things that you're interested in, or books like Raf Costa's Theory of Fun. This one I enjoyed. And obviously you don't gain contacts through these, but you do learn an awful lot from those contacts, which may be a similar goal as to what you're trying to accomplish with networking in the first place. The third place is projects, game jams, and modding. And most or many professionals have side projects or demos or projects that's sort of hanging around. And that includes things like mods, which may even be more public. It's unlikely that you'll work directly with other professionals, but you can definitely work with your peers. That's the most likely group you have for these areas. And it may be that you're able to interact with professionals even if you don't get to work with them, seeking feedback and things like that. These also work great as portfolio pieces. So in general, I think it's a really good thing to do. You don't necessarily want to consider it as networking itself. The things that will happen along the way by doing game design things, which comes on to the fourth point, is if just hanging around with other game designers and developers leads to talking about game design. So with my own peers at Frontier, we do things like board games, hobbies. If you're into sports, there are lots of groups for that sort of thing. So it really can be quite general. You don't have to network in a very formal way. You're kind of just trying to make friends ultimately. We can also talk about events and trade shows. So maybe the most famous one being the Game Developers Conference, or GDC. But that's the thing which is it's very expensive, particularly if you have to fly there and travel there, and the tickets themselves if you're not being sponsored by a company. So your mileage will vary. You should take that under consideration, because you're not going to be able to do these things very often. The events themselves don't repeat very quickly. You can get a lot of this information in online talks, like the GDC Vault in particular, has a lot of video content that you can browse and decide if this is anything that you really want to go and see more of. But even just as things to learn from there, that will also introduce you to people that do those talks, and maybe those are contacts that you can reach out to and ask specific questions about their talks, their particular things. What's maybe more useful is anything which is local to you. That includes related events. For myself, when I was at university, we had animation festivals and events which happened very nearby at the National Media Museum. And that's one of the places that you could ask in-person questions to, because there would be video game professionals at those particular events, even if they're just talking about the animation context or something like that. So examples of those events might be Gamescom or Eurogamer. And then there are other things like competitions, such as the Game Republic Student Showcase, which are geared very much towards students, allow you to really go off and show your skills, but you'll also be able to talk to the judges there, at least briefly about your project, as well as other students, which again are your peers. That comes back to your most important network. Finally, there's social media, things like Twitter or Facebook. And I think your mileage will vary a lot with these things. I think the biggest question is, do you genuinely interact with the platform? You may be more of a passive consumer of media in this regard, so it's more like an academic resource. If you can read threads and things from designers or professionals that you're interested in, that can still be useful. But for me personally, it's not something I get a lot of direct interaction from. I think, if you do use these platforms a lot yourself, then you may find that some devs do, and that this is a thing that you can do as well. Generally, though, developers won't discuss specifics to their projects and profession. They can only typically offer you general career advice or feedback in limited amounts because they have limited time. So yeah, that's what I think about networking with video games professionals. That's the end of my talk, so thank you for listening. And if you're interested in job roles at Frontier, you can follow the link. All right, thanks. Bye.